The following program is a podcast1.com production.
Look around you if you want to brag. You should thank your lucky stars, and I mean thank all 50 in your flag.
We're fighting for our country and for our great American flag. We are fighting for that flag. We want our flag respected. We want our flag respected. And we want our national anthem respected also.
Now, this was the president yesterday in Tennessee. He was declaring an MLK site a national landmark. And he gave what I consider a preview. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for the great Laura Ingraham. She may be joining us later. She was at that big championship game last night. So was the president, the game in Atlanta. Now, those comments you just heard may have been preamble to this, and I want your reaction to it.
Welcome, members of the ROTC units from the University of Georgia and the University of Alabama, joined by our President, Donald J. Trump.
This is the open of the national championship game. The president, the ROTC, marching onto the field. He stands midfield, and as the group, what was that group, Zach Brown band, as they sang the national anthem, the president stood there, hand on chest. And he was greeted by what, to my ear, was mostly cheers. Now, there were some in the stands that were saying there was some boos there. Well, that's natural. That's any president, particularly after they won election. Forget it. You're going to get booed. I want your reaction, first of all, to the president's appearance at the national championship game. I have to tell you, we were watching this game with a group of people, and there were audible cheers and applause in the room. And I would say half of the people, maybe not half, almost half of the people in this room had not voted for Donald Trump for president. But we had a robust conversation when it started about the importance of honoring the flag, respecting the national anthem, and the kids started talking about it too who were watching the game. So your thoughts on the president making a statement? That's clearly what he did. He was going to be at this game. He could have very easily gone up to the box, waved, and stood there with his hand over his chest. No, he went center of the field, stood there as the colors were presented, and made a statement. Now, as you know, the president has been the major critic of the NFL for its kneeling and what he considers a disrespectful gesture toward the national anthem, and it caused a national conversation. So your reaction to what you saw last night, 855-405-2872, and what a game. I know all my people in Bama are just smiling ear to ear. They may not go to work today. I think they're still dancing in the street. It's like a Saints victory, in the French Quarter. You don't get off the high easily. What a game. Now, I didn't have a dog in the fight for either of these teams, though I did live in Alabama for a while, so I'm more partial to them. It was unbelievable. What Saban did, bringing in that freshman quarterback. After the coin toss, I don't know how many of you saw the game. It went into overtime. 2020, it went into overtime. They had a coin toss, and Alabama decides to give Georgia the first possession. And I'm hitting my head going, what are they doing? Well, it was a brilliant move. They had more confidence in their own defense to keep Georgia from scoring a touchdown, which they did. And eventually Alabama, really quickly, Alabama scored a touchdown, I think in the second play. It was an unbelievable game, and Saban pulled it out. Play that quarterback. His name is, he's from Hawaii, Tua Tagovailoa. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but forgive me if I'm not.
The internet, they've fallen in love with you because you're so humble, and you're humble in your victory. You're humble in everything that you've said about this team and this big win that you were a big part of yesterday. And what does it feel like to have all this support from everybody?
I mean, it feels really good. You know, it's a blessing. I don't know what other way would be best to describe that. That's all I would be able to say is that it's a blessing.
They brought that freshman in at the last minute. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable game. I mean, you know, the kids were up late. It was great. Just a great game. 855-405-2872. Your thoughts on the president coming out. Was that provocative or an important statement for him to make? Coming out and standing center field during what, not an NFL game, but a collegiate playoff. I also have to talk about this. So much news breaking. They're having bipartisan meetings on immigration at the White House. This is going to be a big blowout. The Democrats want to hold the entire federal budget hostage to a DACA deal. They want a clean DACA deal. They don't want to give the president any of these immigration features he's looking for. Stronger enforcement, building of the wall, end to chain migration, stopping the lottery system that at random allows any immigrant of your... It's kind of like putting an immigrant in the chamber and kind of spinning it. It's the Russian roulette of immigration. Without merit-based or looking at who these people are, just picks them at random. So we'll talk about that. Sean Duffy coming up, Congressman Sean Duffy at the top of the show. We're going to talk to him in a little bit. We also have to get into, and I thought it would die down by now, it's only increasing. Yes, that great sage of political insight, Meryl Streep, on the Jimmy Kimmel Show last night, announcing Hollywood's pick for their president in 2020.
How's everything? Did you have fun last night at the Golden Globes?
Oh, yeah. What a wild night.
Was it a wild night?
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, it was a different, well, certainly not your usual show.
No, and Oprah launched her presidential campaign, I think.
Well, that's what I think.
Do you think there's any chance she really will run for president?
I don't know. I think, you know, we've had some television people run.
Right.
This is a strange series of events since Oprah's speech the other night at the Golden Globes. Now, look, it was a great speech. But I, you know, and I know a lot of people who give great speeches. I've heard great speeches before. I think at times people confuse speech making with leadership. Making a speech is a wonderful thing. President Obama, I have to say, would give some of the most inspiring, uplifting speeches you might hear in your entire lifetime. Amazing speeches. But then when push came to shove, particularly on some of these international situations, he couldn't always muster the leadership or the force needed to stand firm and make a vibrant case for America, whether it was trade policy, Benghazi, dealing with the Iranians. For whatever failings people might have or think about Donald Trump, today the Dow started at its best position since 2003. Unemployment is way, way down. The lowest it's been in more than a decade. We have an international situation, and I'll talk in a moment about North and South Korea. I do think the president is one of the prime instigators of the conversation you're seeing between the two of them. Where this will lead, we don't know. But the fact is, North and South are talking. Looks like they're going to send Olympians to the Olympics together. North and South will march together into the arena, and they're going to continue talking about lessening military tensions. Here's what came out of the meeting. One of the negotiators, the guy on the North Korean side, Kim Jong-un's side, said their warheads are not pointed at China or South Korea, but are pointed at the United States. Now, is that bluffing? Is that just trying to make nice talk? I don't know. But it seems like more provocation from the North Koreans. But at least they're talking. And that hasn't happened in a long time. And they haven't marched together at an Olympics since 2006 in Torino. So we will get into all of this. Now, apparently, it's not just Meryl Streep. Now, politicos are jumping on the Oprah bandwagon. And you can react to this. I know yesterday you went crazy over this. But, well, here are the great sages: Bill Kristol, Kayleigh, and of course Mika Brzezinski.
I think that she connects with people across America in a way that no Democrat on the forefront, no Democrat that you might have named that you think is being pushed aside unfairly, because you know they'd lose. No Democrat can connect like Oprah, and to the very part of this country that feels overlooked by the left.
She may be right. I mean, she is right about that. There's a piece in the New York Times in the arts section of all places, Oprah 2020 and potent storytelling. What politicians could learn from a Golden Globe speech. I have been saying this, Laura Ingraham has been saying this for years. Not only Democrats, Republicans need to get this message too. They were really fortunate in one way that they came across Donald Trump, because Trump had a certain facility and a savvy when it came to media, when it came to branding. As a salesman called the show last week and said, nobody knew how to drive home a message and repeat it and brand it like Donald Trump. He is an innate salesman. And that facility in the public, that fearlessness in the media, served him well. Oprah has a different skill set, but she also has a command of the media, but she does know how to tell a story and to evoke and summon empathy. She can pull at the heartstrings, and that is something that I've always said, it short-circuits politics. It overwhelms ideology. That's what you saw the other night at the Golden Globes. That's an important lesson to draw from her. Really important. And I think it's why you have even people on the right, you have Bill Kristol and these others, of course he's a never-Trumper, saying this could be Oprah's time.
She's an impressive woman. It was an impressive speech. And, you know, I half tongue-in-cheek encouraged her to run for the Democratic nomination. But, you know, why not? She has a better connection, I think, with middle America than Elizabeth Warren. She's more charismatic than John Hickenlooper or a lot of those other candidates. She's got more good sense on economics, from my point of view, than Bernie Sanders. She's actually done extremely well, came up genuinely from extremely, hard scrabble origins and an American success story. She's younger than Biden, Warren, and Sanders. Why shouldn't she run?
Hogan Gidley, whom I know, a deputy White House press secretary, was asked by reporters about this, Oprah's possible running. He said, we welcome the challenge, whether it be Oprah or anybody else. They're ready. Okay, come on, Oprah. When we return, we're going to get further into this. Again, we'll discuss the president's appearance and statement, I would say, at the national championship last night. That incredible Alabama-Georgia game. Apologies to all the poor people in Georgia who supported their Bulldogs. They put on a great game, though. They were both teams were exceptional. I mean, the fact that the score was 0 for so long shows how well matched these teams were. It was an incredible. It could have gone either way, and there were some lousy calls. I mean, I understand the howls from the Bulldogs this morning. 855-405-2872 is the number. Your thoughts on the president's appearance at the game last night, as well as the possibility of President Oprah. I'm going to tell you why I think it may never happen. Stay right here. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for the great Laura Ingraham. Much more ahead. We're going to get into the DACA deal, foreign policy, and why your kids lying to you might not be a bad thing. Stay right there.
Trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins! The Crimson Tide will not be denied. True freshman to true freshman. Tagovailoa to Devontae Smith. Alabama breaks Georgia Hearts.
Thanks to my wonderful sponsors and your support, I'm glad to say that we can provide this podcast at no cost to you at all. As a loyal listener of my program, please consider testing our sponsors because they're the ones who actually cover the cost to produce this daily show. So if you're a dog lover like I am, how about giving your dog, your best friend, a fresh, healthy, and nutritious diet? When dogs eat well, they live longer and happier lives. I'm here to tell you about NomNomNow.com, which cooks the world's best dog food. It's made fresh in the USA and delivered right to your door every week. Nom Nom Now's customized recipes cook fresh in our kitchen, delivering healthy nutrition you can actually see. Switch to Nom Nom Now and your dog will have more energy, a shinier, softer coat, and a longer, better life. Nom Nom Now really is the best food for your best friend. And right now you can save 50% on your first 2 orders of fresh, healthy dog food when you use my code Laura at NomNomNow.com. That's code Laura and save 50% on your first 2 orders. NomNom now.com. And code word LAURA.
If the lady's naughty but proper, if the lady's chicer than chic, if her escorts must wear a topper, and each man's the man of the week.
I do think she's intrigued by the idea. I do think that. I also know that after years of watching the Oprah show, you always have the right to change your mind. I don't think at this point she is actually considering it. But listen, there are people who have said they want to be her campaign manager, who want to quit their jobs and campaign for her. She loves this country and would like to be of service in some way. But I don't think that she is actively considering it.
For the record, that is
I don't think she's actively considering it.
If her whims are close to alarming, and it's known
oh, gosh. I love the media cheerleading and hand-wringing over, will Oprah run? She gave a speech at the Golden Globes, guys. You know, Meryl Streep gave a speech last year at the Golden Globes. Also shot through with politics, perhaps not as inspirational, not as winning, but she isn't much qualification for running for president. Actually, Oprah has launched so many enterprises, you might be able to make the case that she has more experience. Okay? But look, I'm the first to say Oprah is winning. She can stir empathy in her audiences. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. Look, I think Oprah's a huge talent. She really is. She's great at what she does. But I'll tell you in a moment. I want to get more of your opinion before I tell you why. I think she will not make a run for the presidency. Won't do it. But why she's going to continue this kind of veil game and keep the veils up for a little longer. Let's go to Tyler, Virginia. You wanted to talk about the president making an appearance at that national championship last night, putting his hand on his heart, standing midfield during the anthem. You liked it.
Yes, I did, Raymond. I thought it was, you asked, was it provocative or was it a good movement? I think it was both. Yeah. I think it was provocative and another illustration of his kind of organic political instincts, which are good. I think there's going to be a lot of people that thought, wow, finally, someone is really, here's the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, and he's honoring the national anthems and the national anthem and our military. I think that was a great thing for him to do.
Mm-hmm. You know, Tyler, I tend to agree with you, and I think you nailed it. I mean, people are talking about Oprah today, and nobody makes a better speech than Oprah or can empathize better than Oprah, but nobody can sell or drive home a point, even a countercultural point, in a way nobody expected in the world. The man, he brands you, whether it's, Lil Bob Corker or Sloppy Steve, he's great at branding things and driving a message home. What we saw last night was an in-your-face to the NFL and an underscoring and highlighting of what every American. They instinctively got that message. I saw it in talking about it, and I certainly saw it online. Sean Duffy, coming up, representative from Wisconsin. We'll get into DACA, trade, and much more. Stay right there.
For too long, women have not been heard or believed if they dared to speak their truth to the power of those men. But their time is up.
You could close your eyes and imagine that speech being given in Iowa, let's say, right? Or as a campaign kickoff. Now, that's not to say that that was but you could close your eyes, particularly the end. There's going to be a moment when
crescendoed into
the audience is getting into it. Now, she's speaking to Hollywood. She's not speaking to Iowa, but still, that messaging right now very powerful.
Oh my gosh. This is what masquerades as political punditry in America. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. I know we have a lot of listeners in Iowa. Would what you heard at the Golden Globes from Oprah appeal to you? 855-405-2872. See, I don't want to hear from pundits. I want to hear from Americans. Would Iowans, would that appeal to you? Oprah saying time's up and talking about watching Sidney Poitier at the Golden Globes, and now she's there holding the thing. I mean, the woman did befriend Harvey Weinstein for decades. I mean, I don't even know where to go with that. Anyway, more importantly, we are joined on the line, but I will take your calls on it. I know every line's lit up, so we'll get to that shortly. Joining us on the line is Congressman Sean Duffy of Wisconsin. Congressman Duffy, thank you for being with us.
Raymond, it's great to be with you, too. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I need to ask you the big pressing question everybody's asking this morning, which is, do you think Oprah could or would make a run for it in 2020?
It's buzzing up all the news channels, right? Listen, Donald Trump makes it look easy, doesn't he? He comes from reality TV, steps in, and performs incredibly well, shocks the world, and shocks liberals and wins this election. Making it look easy, I think liberals go, oh, our great hope now will be Oprah. Listen, I don't think she has what it takes to run.
But but Congressman, you of all people should know, being on Real World, on MTV, and that having been part of your biography, it does help to have a familiarity and be in the media spotlight for a while. Just going through that gauntlet does teach you something that you need in politics about empathy, communication, relation with people.
And name recognition matters, no doubt. But Donald Trump won because people knew him, no doubt. That made it easier for him. But he won because of his ideas. He won because America was ready for a pro-growth agenda. They were ready for someone to actually deal with our southern border and address illegal immigration. It was the message of Donald Trump, in conjunction with the fact that people knew who he was from reality TV, that allowed him to win this election. And to think that we would roll back this great economy and go to a progressive agenda again like Barack Obama, but with Oprah, I don't think the American people will stand for that. So again, have at it, Oprah. Love to see you run, but I think with this kind of an economy, this kind of growth, these many people going back to work, these kind of wages and bonuses coming to the American people, Donald Trump's not going to lose.
Sean Duffy, we're talking to Congressman Duffy from Wisconsin. There is a huge battle brewing. Today is a bipartisan meeting at the White House about the immigration options here, both sides hardening their positions. It appears the president is not going to give anybody a DACA deal unless there are some serious enforcement provisions attached, including building that wall. Your thoughts on where we are now? It looks like the Democrats are willing to hold up not only a DACA deal, but willing to hold the entire federal budget hostage to a DACA deal and their version of it.
So I think you're absolutely right, Raymond. And so what I think this comes down to is reading the tea leaves about who will be blamed if the government shuts down. And if Democrats believe they can shut the government down in exchange for DACA, they're going to do it. But I think all things being equal, Republicans are the ones that are usually blamed, right? We always get blamed with the government shutdown. But there's a scenario here where I don't think that'll actually happen. If you see the Republican House pass a funding bill, and also trying to deal with driving more money into our military. I mean, Raymond, we have ships that are colliding in training exercises, planes that are falling out of the sky, not in war, but in training, and men and women are dying. We need to put more money into the military. If we do a budget and we pass it out of the House, a spending bill, and we send it to the Senate, and the Senate Republicans all vote for it, and Senate Democrats do not. There's only going to be one party to blame. It's going to be Democrats for a government shutdown. And just as a reminder, your listeners know that obviously Republicans control the Senate, but to pass this funding bill, you need 60 votes, which means 9 Democrats have to vote for this bill to actually pass it. So if we structure this the right way, I think Democrats are going to read the tea leaves and say, you know what, I don't want to push DACA right now because if the government shuts down, we're the ones that are going to get blamed. And it's a pretty hard thing to argue to the American people. I want to shut the government down to help illegal kids. All the while, I'm going to potentially take money away from our veterans and our seniors and the men and women who work in federal positions, federal jobs. They're standing with a group of people who aren't even here lawfully in opposition to Americans. I don't know they're going to make that play call.
I want you to hear this. This is Congressman Joaquin Castro, one of your colleagues, talking about this DACA deal because I think they're prepared to do just what you laid out. Listen.
Now, would you support some funding for a physical border wall between the U.S. and Mexico if it led to protecting 700,000 or 800,000 dreamers here in the United States?
I think that's going to be a very tough deal for the president to make. I don't believe that we should be trading the lives of 800,000 young dreamers for a wall across America.
This is madness. I mean, in this sense, the president and you all, as congresspeople, are there to protect and defend the position of the American citizens, not the position of anybody who comes here, whether by their own hand or by the hand of others. We will find a solution for these kids. They're not going to be all deported overnight. But the question is, where do we go from here? If you have Democrats unwilling to even have a discussion about this, they are willing, it seems, to accept some immigration enforcement, but they don't want funding of that wall, which what's the president asking, $18 billion now?
$18 billion, which is shocking, and you've, I imagine, I've talked about this, but that Barack Obama and Joe Biden and a whole slew of Democrats have all voted for the Secure Fence Act in 2006, and they all made statements in favor of it, saying it's going to help reduce illegal immigration on our border. And now that the wall is being supported by Donald Trump, all of a sudden Democrats now say, oh, no, this is inhumane, it's racist, we don't want to fund a border wall. Well, listen, the fundamentals of a border wall haven't changed from 2006 to 2018. A wall is going to work the same today as it would in 2006. It's going to keep folks who want to come to our country unlawfully out of the country. And, Raymond, it comes down to a basic premise. Do the American citizens have the right to decide who comes in and out of our country? Or do we have the belief if anyone wants to pack a backpack and truck across Mexico into America because their heart desires, they just come in because they want to? I think most Americans say we have the right as Americans to determine who comes in and who doesn't. You just don't get to decide to walk into America. We decide who gets to come in. And a border wall helps us enforce our immigration policy. And what Democrats want is they want to continue with this open border policy because they believe that this is electorally advantageous to them. And what I mean by that is this is a wedge issue for them. And if they continue to allow unlawful immigrants to come into the country, they have a wedge issue with Hispanics in America. And that wedge issue helps drive out their vote totals at election time. If we actually secure the border and we resolve our immigration problems in America, you take away that wedge issue, and all of a sudden Hispanic voters who they start businesses at 2 to 3 times the national average. They're people usually of faith. They're hardworking. They look awfully similar to Republicans without this Democrat wedge issue in place. So I believe that they want to keep this issue alive and well. They don't want to resolve it because they think they win politically by way of it.
Before I let you go, Senator Lindsey Graham, we're talking to Congressman Sean Duffy. Do you support or would you support this idea that Lindsey Graham floated last week, that perhaps an exit tax at the border where Americans pay a tax every time they cross the border could be a means to pay for the wall?
Listen, I think we have to look at all funding streams to pay for it, but I don't want to let that get in the way right now of the larger conversation of we don't do DACA unless we get border security. And that means a border wall. And the president's actually right, Raymond, too. We have to stop chain migration. This idea that, and I know you got to go in a second, but you could be a dreamer. Someone, you're a child who was brought here unlawfully by a parent. Now we take, we have open hearts and soft hearts as Americans. We let that dreamer stay in America. Democrats in 5 years want to allow them to become a citizen. And the way that chain migration works is that new American citizen who used to be a dreamer can bring the parents into the country lawfully because of chain migration. That's a parent who came illegally with their child. In the end, they get around the immigration laws by way of having a young kid with them. The child becomes a citizen and all of a sudden make the parent legal. That's not the way the system is supposed to work. This is absolutely dysfunctional. And I got to tell you, I couldn't be prouder of the president for holding firm and driving a message to Democrats that there's going to be no deal on DACA kids. And we want to deal with these kids. We do want to deal with them. We think that's the right thing to do. But we also don't want to find ourselves in the same situation 10 or 15 years from now with a whole new generation of DACA kids because we didn't fix the root cause of the problem, which is an open border. We're going to deal with the DACA kids, but we're going to deal with the border. And God love Donald Trump for having the political will to drive Republicans and the American people to make sure that we secure our border and no deal without a wall.
Before I let you go, the big story today, and the president is getting hammered for lifting the protected status of the 200,000 Salvadorans who were here, mostly as a result of an earthquake. They have to go back home. They have 18 months to do it. People are saying this is cruel, it's inhumane, including bishops and archbishops in the Catholic Church who are rending their garments over this. You would say what?
Listen, we've allowed time for the country to heal and mend from natural disaster. And it's time now to pack up and go back home. I mean, just because we have an open heart and let people come in during natural disasters doesn't mean that they get to stay forever. And Donald Trump, I think, especially with some of the gang activity that has, come with, some of these folks, I think the president's right. Listen, let's start sending people back. And if you want to apply for illegal stuff, you can do that. And I thought he was pretty generous in saying it doesn't happen until 2019, so they have plenty of time to navigate their trip back home or trying to become lawfully here in the United States. But I think it's the right call by the president.
Congressman Sean Duffy, thank you for being here. Always a pleasure. When we return, the president echoes an American hero the other day and the lessons we can learn from this moment in history 203 years later. I'll tell you what that is when the Laura Ingraham Show continues. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura. Stay right there.
Don't try to put on an act. You can't do that to modern woman.
I want tonight to express gratitude to all the women who have endured years of abuse and assault because they, like my mother, had children to feed and bills to pay and dreams to pursue. They are domestic workers and farm workers. They are working in factories and they work in restaurants and they're in academia and engineering and medicine and science. They're part of the world of tech and politics and business. There are athletes in the Olympics and there are soldiers in the military.
Athletes in the Olympics and soldiers in the military. How illuminating. That was Oprah from the Golden Globe. Some saying this would play in Iowa. What was his name? Shaliza was saying on CNN. Shaliza on CNN this morning. I could see this playing in Iowa. I could hear this. I imagine it there as an opening volley in Iowa. Well, we have a caller on a couple of them. Gail from Iowa, your reaction. Would this play in Iowa?
It will absolutely not play in Iowa. It does not resonate one iota with me. She's a Hollywood liberal. It's not everyday life. She has no clue what we're like out here. None. And I'm tired of the liberals making women into victims. I was attacked once. I fought back. Say no. Slap them across the face. Get out. That's all you have to do. Quit being a victim.
I like you, Gail. You're not Gail King, are you?
No.
Okay.
But my last name does start with a K. It
Okay,
does
well, I
start
won't-
with a K. I have the same initials.
I'm not going to press you on that, but if I see you on the CBS This Morning show, tell me hello. Thank you, Gail. Very insightful. And, you know, Congressman Duffy made the same point. Just because someone is well known on TV doesn't mean they will resonate and sell the same issues that propelled Donald Trump to office. He does make it look easy because he's been doing it for so long. And I also will say this. He has an innate understanding politically of where the people are. And though Oprah, I think, can read people and can be empathetic with them, whether she has that political facility and is ready to do trench warfare, which I'm going to get into a little bit later. Trump invoked a national hero in America yesterday. The lessons to be drawn from him, I'll get into that in the next hour. Very quickly, Maryland, Iowa, your reaction to Oprah in Iowa. How do you think it would play?
Not good, because I'm reminded that when she was attacked by the American Beef Council for saying negative comments about eating beef, she had to hire a psychiatrist to deal with it, and that psychiatrist was Dr. Phil. And that's how he started his show. He did it for him. So I'm sure she can be empathetic to how Trump is being attacked for his mental stability, like hers when she was attacked by the American Beef Council.
She was also attacked for abuse at that school, I think, in Africa that she opened out. It all comes back to me. And she hired a litigator who had been a family prosecutor for a while in the Chicago court system. It protected children. Very interesting insights, as always, from the audience. Much more to get to. The DACA deal and the historical precedent Donald Trump invoked yesterday. The Laura Ingraham Show continues in a moment. Raymond Arroyo, sitting in for the great lady. Stay.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
In 1814, we took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down the mighty Mississippi. We took a little bacon and we took a little beans, and we caught the bloody British in a town in New Orleans.
In December of 1814, Jackson and his Tennessee volunteers had made their way to New Orleans to defend that crucial port from the British. Through grueling winter weeks, horrible weather, icy rain, hunger, and sleepless nights, a few thousand American patriots fought to hold back a British force nearly twice as large and that everybody thought was totally unstoppable.
Old Hickory said we could take them by surprise if we didn't.
Well, this was in Tennessee yesterday. The president talking about Andrew Jackson and the critical moment in January of 1812. Now, I bring this up, Raymond Arroyo, sitting in for Laura Ingraham. This has personal resonance for me, and I think it speaks to our national conversation right now. And we're going to get into a moment. There's a piece that just appeared called The Decline of Anti-Trumpism in, of all places, the New York Times. But I want to back up for a moment because it's important for us to remember not only who we are today, but who we were, because they're great lessons to learn from history. And people forget the Battle of New Orleans and how critical it was and how touch and go it was. Remember, Andrew Jackson goes down to New Orleans, where I'm broadcasting today, so it has real resonance for me. And there's a neat tie-in here. It was by no means a fait accompli that General Jackson would prevail. He assembled a ragtag army. Remember, the British had pulled into the Mississippi with 7,500 trained regiment soldiers. 7,500. What Jackson did was assemble a group of Army regulars, state militia. He got some Choctaw warriors, the ones he could find in Louisiana. And then he got John Lafitte's Baratarians, pirates. So this was kind of a motley crew that he brought together. Now, this was the War of 1812, but this battle didn't take place till 1815, 203 years ago. Now, Jackson was so uncertain of the outcome here. While he was in New Orleans, he asked the Ursuline nuns who had a convent there. And I love that our friend Brian Kilmeade just wrote a book called The Miracle of New Orleans, Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans. It's about this, something I've known about since I was a boy. The Ursuline convent is in the French Quarter in New Orleans. It's one of the oldest buildings in the French Quarter. And those nuns, French nuns, who came when the place was settled by the French, remember, it was a penal colony, so they sent nuns to civilize the animals who were here. And the Ursulines prayed, and they had a particular devotion to a French little statue they brought from France, and it was Our Lady of Prompt Succor, Mary under the visage of Our Lady of Prompt Succor, quick relief. And they prayed to her for victory in the Battle of New Orleans. Well, in 1815, on January 8th, near the Chalmette Plantation, the British Army neared the fortification. But remember, Jackson had these hunters, trapsmen, pirates. They knew the land better than the Brits, and they picked them off one after another, including Lieutenant General Edward Pakenham, who was the commander of the force. And within about 30 minutes, Jackson and his men had killed 700 British, wounded 1,400, and took 500 prisoners. Now remember, the Brits had 7,500 people when the battle started. Jackson only had 4,700. But they were better deployed, better armed, and ready for this particular battle. They dug trenches too. You can still go there to the Chalmette battlefield and see this. Yesterday, I happened to go to the Ursuline convent. There's a shrine here in New Orleans on State Street. And for 203 years, the Ursuline nuns made a deal with Our Lady of Prompt Succor, and that deal was that if she delivered America and the city of New Orleans from British invasion, that they would every year on that day, January 8th, have a special mass and sing the Te Deum. They have done that for 203 years. I was at the celebration yesterday. And I have to tell you, there is something amazing about and important about connecting your children, your community, to the history of who we are and who we were, a people outnumbered at times, a people who the odds are stacked against you, but with faith and determination and a common purpose, you can accomplish a great deal. So I liked that Donald Trump invoked Andy Jackson yesterday. I know it's a little unpopular to do so today because of Jackson's history with the Trail of Tears, and he too was a slave owner. But we have to take people as they are in the context of the historical moment that they occupy. You separate the good from the bad. And when you look at the Battle of New Orleans, this is what propelled Andy Jackson to the White House. He became a national figure. And he thanked the Ursuline nuns, by the way, for this victory. And annually, he would even come back to the city. They would have parades and celebrations for him. He was such a folk hero here. And today, if you go to the middle of the French Quarter, really the center of town, it's Jackson Square, where you have that big bronze of Jackson on the horse tipping his hat to the city and all visitors. So, a little personal note from me. It was nice being part of that yesterday, and to see the president invoking it as well. Now today I have to get into this. David Brooks, not David Brock, but David Brooks in the New York Times. Forgive me, David Brooks. He's got a piece called "The Decline of Anti-Trumpism." This is curious. Now David Brooks is one of the most, I guess he was one of the most virulent never-Trumpers. Certainly not a fan of the president's. That he is writing such a piece tells you a great deal. The president is wearing down his enemies and resistance. David Brooks writes, "The Decline of Anti-Trumpism," that's the title. Let me start with 3 inconvenient observations based on dozens of conversations around Washington over the past year. First, people who go into the White House, have a meeting with President Trump, usually leave pleasantly surprised They find that Trump is not the raving madman they expect from his tweet storms or the media coverage. They generally say he's affable, if repetitive. He runs a normal, good meeting and seems well-informed enough to get by. Well, thanks a lot, David Brooks. But from David Brooks, that's a lot. That's a big compliment. Second, people who work in the Trump administration have wildly divergent views about their boss. Some think he's a deranged child, as Michael Wolff reported. Some think he's merely a distraction they can work around. Some think he is strange, but not impossible. Some genuinely admire Trump. Some filter out his crazy stuff and pretend it doesn't exist. Third, the White House is getting more professional. Imagine if Trump didn't tweet. The craziness of the past weeks would be out of the way, and we'd see a White House that is briskly pursuing its goals. The shift in our Pakistan policy, the shift in our offshore drilling policy, the fruition of our ISIS policy, the nomination of judgeships, and the formation of policies on infrastructure, DACA, North Korea, and trade. It's almost as if there are two White Houses. There's the Potemkin White House, which we tend to focus on, Trump berserk in front of the TV, the lawyers working the Russian investigation and the press operation. Then there is the invisible White House that you never hear about, unless you listen to this show or watch the Ingraham angle, which is getting more effective at managing around the distracted boss. See, I think this analysis is a little... Here's where it's wrong. It's wrong in that it assumes that Trump is an obstacle to the progress. And I would argue Trump, whether you like him or not, or his techniques, and they are brash, and they are unexpected and unconventional, and he can be a bomb thrower. But you have to give the guy credit for his own policies. It's not like he's running around watching, Judge Judy in the afternoon and somebody else is running these meetings or somebody else is giving these speeches or somebody else is tweeting to get under the skin of his opponents or foreign governments that mean the United States harm. He is doing this himself. And you have to give the president credit. So I want your reaction. 855-405-2872. Do you see a bit of that Jacksonian spirit in Donald Trump? He clearly has an attachment to Jackson. And Jackson, too, old Hickory, would go in there and do things people didn't always like. He was an unconventional leader. He was a trench warrior. And he also knew how to stir up the people, and he was something of a folk hero. I see the similarities. And see, I also, just because I see that bronze on the horse, the guy tipping his hat, I also know there were a lot of people that hated that guy, even people close to him. Did you know that, and I didn't know this until I read the John Meacham biography, which is very well done, American Lion. And in it, he talks about, you've heard that term, the kitchen cabinet, like the president is convening his kitchen cabinet, kind of a casual group of advisors. It was Andy Jackson who coined the term because he would literally meet with family and friends who were living in the White House with him, and they were his kitchen cabinet, and they would advise him. Some of these people were members of his cabinet. Some were just dear friends whose spouses had died. Jackson's spouse had died, so I think it was a niece who took a more prominent role in the White House, stepped into that role. Fascinating man and a fascinating history. Morning Joe Scarborough was going crazy about this Brooks piece, and, he hates the voters. Listen.
I want to know when Americans are going to grow up and understand that they need to elect people who actually know how Washington works and know how to make their lives better. Because I'm sick and tired of this. We're going to get outsiders that hate Washington. Look where it's led us over the past 17 years. Look where we are with Donald Trump.
Yeah, look where we are. The economy's going through the roof. The world's taking notice. You're about to get enforcement on the border that no party, either party, could not achieve. I would argue Donald Trump was the answer to the frustration of the American people. They have for decades hired men who knew their way around Washington. They were Washington insiders, from the Clintons to the Bushes to the Obamas. They created, I would argue, the groundswell that led to the election of Donald Trump. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been elected. It was the frustration, the pent-up anger and angst of the people. The same thing that propelled Jackson to office. They were looking for a leader. They were looking for somebody who would take the old hickory out and crack it over some heads. That's what's happening. I know Washington isn't a happy place. I know not everybody's happy with him, with Trump today. David Brooks writes this, in every war, this is really interesting, in every war, nations come to resemble their enemies. I don't know if that's true. So I suppose it's normal that the anti-Trump movement would come to resemble the pro-Trump movement. I've noticed a lot of young people look at the monotonous daily hysteria of we anti-Trumpers and they find it silly. This isn't just a struggle over a president. It's a struggle over what rules we're going to play by after Trump. Are we all going to descend permanently into the Trump standard of acceptable behavior? Or are we going to restore the distinction between excellence and mediocrity, truth and a lie? Or are we to insist on the difference between a genuine expert and an ill-informed blowhard? You see, here's the problem. The experts are the people who delivered you Benghazi, who delivered you the bad Iranian deal, who delivered you trade imbalances. See, I think the analysis is off because people's ideology overwhelms them. Look, I look at the president with clear eyes. I see the fits of anger. I see the explosions on Twitter. There are things that I wouldn't do. There are messages articulated in ways I would not. But I have to, and this is where we all have to be humble enough to say, we misjudged this because the outcome is an effective one. The outcome is something nobody anticipated. And Donald Trump is responsible for that. I'll get your reaction. 855-405-2872. We're going to dig into populism. We're going to look into this DACA deal. And later, a professor dismissed for defending a student's free speech rights. Much more ahead. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for the great Laura Ingraham. Keep it there.
The Jackson, I'm gonna mess around. Yeah, I'm going to Jackson.
Well, that's not quite the Jackson we had in mind. We had Andy Jackson on the mind. By the way, there was a great story I just read in the front of my local paper, The Advocate, where there was the only rifle used in the Battle of New Orleans was returned after 35 years missing. It was stolen from the Confederate Museum in New Orleans. Turns out a collector had bought it through an antiquities retailer in the French Quarter 30-something years ago. They read about it in the paper. It was returned. So, and that's the only one in existence, the only rifle used in the Battle of New Orleans. Amazing. Let's go to the line. John in Rhode Island, you wanted to say what about the comparison between Trump and Jackson?
Yes, well, first of all, I want to say thank you. It's a pleasure to hear you when Laura's out. You are the male version of Laura.
Oh.
You guys articulate. You guys are clear-thinking articulators, and I love the banter, and I love listening to you guys.
Well, you're very kind,
well,
but I don't look nearly as good in those shoes, but okay.
I saw you on TV. You're a handsome fellow.
Oh, thank you.
I was born in Brooklyn, New York, even though I live in Rhode Island now. And I know my buddy from Queens, Donald, is a real maverick, a roll-up-your-sleeve type of guy. New Yorkers are like that. We're brass. We tell it like it is, and we don't sit around with our fancy suits and drink tea with our pinkies up in the air. We get things done. And if it takes a brash guy like Jackson and similar, like you said, to Donald, that's what we need. You're right. Since Reagan, all we've had is lip service, and the rich get richer, and the middle class who helped build this country just can't get a break, and losing jobs. I was out of work myself for a year when I was 55 years old. It's scary.
Yeah, well, I'm going to play. You are resonating, and I think with the reaction of most Americans. Yes, Trump is brash. Yes, he's unconventional. I know he's turning over the ways of Washington. Guess what? That's what Americans wanted, and we're seeing the results. If he was a failure and nothing were changing, if the economy were tanking, if the trade was going through the floor, if people were streaming over the border, then you could say, you know what? America bungled. America muffed it up. We should have gone with a more stable figure. But the opposite is happening. So in a very short amount of time, and whether you like him or hate him, you've got to look and say, this is what's going on. It's not the end of the world. He may rub my skin raw. But he's achieving what he said he'd achieve, and he's doing it in a way no one expected, and achieving more than any of our recent experts were capable. Stay right there.
Hi, this is Ben Domenech, the host of the Federalist Radio Hour. We're a daily show coming to you 5 days a week from Washington, D.C., where we interview our nation's top journalists, politicians, authors, chefs, economists, entertainers, and more. If you're looking for a contrarian discussion on news, politics, or culture, give us a listen and subscribe at podcastone.com, the new Podcast One app, or at Apple Podcasts.
Small measure to the...
Pretty damn hard to run the most consequential, frustrating government on the face of the earth, and the greatest government on the face of the earth. And I want to know when Americans are going to grow up and understand that they need to elect people who actually know how Washington works and know how to make their lives better. Because I'm sick and tired of this. We're going to get outsiders that hate Washington. Look where it's led us over the past 17 years.
That was Morning Joe. Somewhere there, he yearns for Jeb Bush to have been elected, of all people. Well, Jeb tried, and he lost in a terrible fashion. I mean, Joe Scarborough is amazing. He makes it seem as if the American people and the GOP didn't vet these candidates. Jeb Bush had hundreds of millions of dollars supporting his candidacy. He had the entire establishment at a certain point backing him. He was someone with insider knowledge, somebody who knew how Washington worked. They didn't want him. Very low energy, Jeb. Very low energy. Didn't have it. So here we are. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham, and I'm delighted to be joined by Kayleigh McEnany. And she is the author of a new book, in addition to being a spokesman for the RNC. Her new book is called The New American Revolution, The Making of a Populist Movement. What I love about this is it's not about Washington insiders or people who are disgusted with Trump, but rather it is about the people in the heartland throughout the country who made this movement. And she took the time to go out and talk to those people. Kayleigh McEnany joins me now. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Raymond. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you highlighting the book and the people in it.
What did you learn as you went out to the heartland? What surprised you the most as you talked to actual people and escaped the bubble of Washington about this administration as well as this movement?
That's right. So for the New American Revolution, I left the confines of D.C., the confines of New York, and went out to the heartland. I went to Wadsworth, Ohio. I went to Texarkana, Arkansas, Lakeway, Texas. And what surprised me most is I anticipated finding an angry electorate, and I certainly found that. There was a lot of anger. But what I found even more than anger was the resiliency of the American people, the ability, when government had failed them, to rise above their situation, to rely on faith, and to be self-sufficient. I mean, people who had lost loved ones in terrorist attacks like Kim Copeland, a family on Law Enforcement Appreciation Day, important to highlight them, Justin Weinbrenner, who died at the hands of a criminal who shouldn't have been out on the streets, and to see their resiliency and the ability to rise above a situation when government had left them behind.
And as you talk to people about particularly this Michael Wolff book, we've seen all the details come out. Wolff now saying you have to believe every word of this. It's all true. Everything, every salacious detail is true. This conflicts with much of your reportage, even in the book. You actually, unlike he, spoke to some of the family members near Trump, some of his top consultants, when Wolff apparently depended on either third-party sources or a couple of people that he had access to.
That's right, Raymond. So one of the things that Wolff erroneously said in his tabloid book of lies is that there was no optimism in Trump Tower. And not only was there no optimism on election night, that in fact the campaign wanted to lose. A really laughable assertion. And, you know, I conducted an interview with Jared Kushner, and Jared Kushner told me that he said that night when he looked at the Trump internal campaign data, this is going to be a Rust Belt Brexit. We are going to win this. And exit polls certainly were brutal when they came out. The mainstream media polling was. But there was a lot of optimism in Trump Tower because, much like I did for this book, they had left the confines of New York and traveled all across the country, like Jared said, to Michigan, Wisconsin. They targeted these states as winnable. When Hillary thought it was a head fake, they saw this as winnable.
And why did you decide to undertake this kind of journey, to go across the country, to talk to the Americans that really shaped this populist movement? And what did they tell you? I mean, what did they tell you about how Trump is performing? Has he lived up to their expectations? If you believe David Brooks and so many of these other people, you know, you heard Joe Scarborough a moment ago, the frustration, the anger these people feel, once populists, we might add, now they want Trump out.
That's right. They want Trump out. You're exactly right. And it's killing them that he's achieving so much at record rates via tax cuts, terrorism. You look, and on every single front he's delivering, and the people I spoke to recognize that. But, you know, I thought it was important to go speak to the people because the Trump base has been demonized. We know Hillary Clinton called them irredeemable, deplorable, and I thought it was really important to put a human face on the Trump voter. And I want to, you know, give a nod to Laura Ingraham here because I have Populism on the cover. And Laura Ingraham was the head of the conservative populist movement. She was at the forefront back when David Bratt toppled Eric Cantor. And I want to point out a quote I have from Laura in the book. She said there's going to be a realignment. She predicted this 2 years before Trump was even on the scene. And she said she'd rather work with some of the people on the left today than the GOP establishment. She said this 2 years before Donald Trump came on the scene because she recognized the angst among the people. And it's the angst that I saw traveling the country of these folks who are not irredeemable or deplorable, but hardworking Americans.
No, there's no doubt in my mind. And look, there were times where I thought, what is she saying? What is Laura saying? And she was 100% right. I mean, there was a meeting of the left and the establishment in the Republican Party. They did not want an outsider in any fashion, and the people needed and were crying out for some change. They were crying out for a different approach. You have David Brooks today defaming the president, saying, look, these tweet storms are outrageous, and the staff is getting things done in spite of him. They're working around the president. Your reportage, your access to the White House tells you what?
It tells me that there's a White House hard at work. I'm in the White House constantly, at meetings, getting progress reports and updates. It's not chaos. This is an administration of action, an administration that, again, historic achievement, and don't just take that from me. Look at the facts. Circuit judges being confirmed at a record rate, regulations rescinded at a record rate, tax cuts like we haven't seen in 3 decades. And David Brooks and the fraudulent, false reporting of the New York Times and other entities all across this country, the mainstream media, they're just wrong. They're off base. They always want to default to the salacious, never the issues the American people care about. And make no mistake, this is an administration that will go down in history as one that has achieved on behalf of the people.
Kayleigh McEnany, thank you so much for being here. The new book, The New American Revolution, The Making of a Populist Movement, is in bookstores everywhere. Of course, you can see Kayleigh. She defends the president. She's a spokesman at the RNC. Thanks for being with us, Kayleigh.
Thanks, Raymond. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And the Laura Ingraham Show will continue in a moment. Stay right there.
Must I do? Scream and yell till I'm blue. Curse your soul. When will you come back to me?
Jeb Bush, not the warmest guy in the world. He's not. I mean, George W. was a lot warmer than Jeb was. But Jeb is the best governor.
Yeah.
And probably the best governing force I've ever come across in my life. Extraordinary. He was an extraordinary leader, even if you didn't like his ideology. Extraordinary leader. He's a bad candidate. Well, he was a great governor, and he would have been a great president.
Oh, Joe Scarborough, pining. Come back to me, Jeb. Please. It didn't work. Jeb Bush had one of the most lackluster performances. We should pull some of the bites of those debates between Jeb Bush and Donald Trump. They were humiliating. Jeb Bush is a very nice man. I've met him. I know him. He was a good governor. He was not up to the moment. And part of being a president, part of rising to that cry of the people, is being ready for the moment in history that you occupy. Jeb Bush was not the man of that moment. He was the man of 1993 in Florida. Very competent and good governor. But for Joe Scarborough to be weeping and moaning about Jeb Bush? Really? On a day when we were told, and I want to remind everybody, when Donald Trump mentioned Lil Kim and having a bigger nuclear button than Lil Kim in North Korea, we were told by everyone, and I could create the montage, that this was going to create a nuclear holocaust. We had bishops issuing statements that we must be very careful and the world is going to come apart and that we're on the edge, the precipice of a nuclear annihilation. What is he doing? Oh my God. Turns out North and South Korea had a meeting today. They're sending jointly Olympians to the South Korean Olympics. Okay? Or the China Olympics. They're going to have a conversation about lessening military tensions. China, last week, unreported except for this show, and one little tiny international blurb I saw. China tightening the sanctions noose on North Korea, saying if people continue to trade with North Korea in violation of the UN sanctions, they will be dealt with severely. China is the primary trade partner with North Korea. If you don't think all of that is related and attached to Donald Trump's big stick and big mouth, you're wrong. He is carrying a big stick and has a big mouth. Both. This rattles people in D.C. It upsets them. It rubs their sensitivities raw. But look at the results. Again, everybody's got to have the introspection. Take a breath and say, maybe I was wrong. Because when you do that, it allows you to see things that your ideology, even your own arrogance, might be blocking out. And as we heard in the last segment with Kayleigh, she mentioned Laura being, really almost prophetic about Trump's rise. She knew and could see the frustration in the people, and she knew that another candidate like John McCain or Mitt Romney was not going to fill the bill. It was going to take something else, something other, to overcome not only the internal establishment opposition, but then the opposition ideologically and politically. Donald Trump, in many ways, was the fulfillment of that yearning from the people. Is he perfect? Of course not. No candidate is perfect. Are we going to defend him on everything? No. But when real achievement and accomplishments are happening, back off for a minute and smile. Enjoy your tax cut and your Christmas bonus. You got it. We know you did. Including Joe Scarborough, who got a nice big fat check from Comcast. All attributable to the Trump tax cuts. That's what Comcast said they were doing. So it is amazing that we go back to somebody like Jeb Bush. Really? We're going to take a break. Much more when we come back, including a university sacking a professor for defending the free speech rights of a student. The man is on the street as a result. We're going to talk to him. We're going to get into much more, including how do you pay for the border wall. All of that's coming up. And I found this story that I'm going to share with you later. Parents, we all have this problem at one point or another, where your child lies to you. You ask them a straightforward question, and you get an answer that might come from a political candidate. They start bending or shading the truth. Sometimes they don't even try to shade it. They just out and out lie. No, I didn't do that, Daddy. No. Might your child lying be a good thing. Not for their soul, but for their development. We're going to get into that as well. A fascinating piece I came across that I thought was interesting. Very quickly, we're going to run to the phones. We have a call from Georgia. Go ahead. You wanted to say what? Patrick?
Hi, Raymond. Yes, sir. The left is so superficially shallow that they prefer a personality over substance. Trump is the George Patton of today, able to get things done, even though people may not care for his personality. I think he outwits every one of them, and he's exactly what we need. Just too bad the left can't see it.
Yeah, your line is a little shaky there, but you were saying he's the George Patton of. Yeah, I mean, I think. Look, I see correlations between he and Andrew Jackson as well. Now, Jackson was a military leader, a commander of men, but Trump is an entrepreneur and one who has launched enterprises and overseen large initiatives, building of hotels, building projects, and a myriad of businesses. And he also understands the pop culture and where the people are. That combination is, and that's why he's outflanking and outwitting these politicos. They don't know. They don't understand. They've never built a business, never made payroll, and their heart really is in themselves and on their own political fortunes, not working earnestly on behalf of the American people. And Donald Trump holds not only the Democrats, but his own party accountable to make sure that that's happening. And the evidence would indicate that it is happening. And I don't know why people are so reluctant to just admit it. Look, when Barack Obama was out talking about fatherhood, and we saw a father taking his daughters out, spending time with them, issuing a call in his own community saying, hey, Black America, we need to get this fatherhood thing together. I commended him for that because he was, and his wife, an amazing example of what it meant to be a parent. And he not only talked it, he lived it. You got to give people credit for what they do. And then you got to look at health care and the Iran deal and the Benghazi stuff and say, not so good. That paved the way to Donald Trump. And liberals have to do some soul searching to realize that's what happened here. It wasn't all Donald Trump. It was Barack Obama creating the landing pad for Donald Trump as George Bush created the landing pad for Barack Obama. Much more ahead. The Laura Ingraham Show continues. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for the great lady. Stay there.
Thanks for listening to the Laura Ingraham Show podcast. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
Podcast One has new shows on our new app. Check out all the cool features to help you explore our exciting new programming, like America's Lakers podcast with Jay Moore, So Random with Corinne Olympios, Attack Each Day, The Harbaugh's podcast, Not Just Sports with Susie Schuster and Rich Eisen, and Sessions with Randy Jackson, as well as your old favorites like The Lady Gang, Steve Austin, Shaquille O'Neal, and Adam Carolla. Get the new Podcast One app in the App Store, Google Play, or podcastone.com.